welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and I'm here to finally do my May wrap up. So I'm prevailing, I'm still posting videos, but am I a tad behind on a lot of them? Yes. I don't want comments. We're just gonna get right into it. My wrap-ups are the videos I enjoy filming the least, and we're just gonna get started with the stats because everybody likes stats. So for the month of May, I did read 18 books. Incredible, fantastic, who is she, amazing. Those 18 books came out to a total of 6,698 pages, which is an average of 216 pages per day, which is really good. I do have some mangas here, which may have bumped it up a bit, but my goal is to average out 100 pages per day. And I succeeded. Of those pages and books, 109 hours were devoted to listening with my eardrums. Lately, I have been really struggling reading without audiobooks, so they have been helping, as you can see. We'll get into the star ratings for the book. So I read 4 5-star books this month, which is amazing. 7 4 stars, 6 3 stars, 1 2 stars, 0 1 stars, 0 DNFs, which comes out to an average of 3.83 for the month, which is fantastic. In regards to the author identity, I read from 9 female authors this month and 9 male authors. 8 of the books were adult books, 9 of them were YA, and 1 of them was a middle grade. And then just in terms of the format, because I like looking at these things, 9 books were audiobooks, 1 book was an ebook, and 8 books were physical. So she's reading with those eyes. First, we're gonna start off with what content you can find on this channel because I'm not going to summarize those books here. So the first vlog project of the month was my finish a series on my channel where I go and finish books that I have bought because I read the first book and I have this really annoying problem where I buy the rest of the series and I don't read them. So that's one of my goals this year. And the series for this month was the Ember in the Ashes Quartet. And I read the last 2 books, A Reaper at the Gates and A Sky Beyond the Storm. So if you would like to know my feelings on these 2 books, I will leave a link up above to the video. The next stuff in terms of content is all of the manga I read for my 24-hour manga vlog, which I will also leave linked up above. I really had a great time and tackled some big boys on the TBR that I've been wanting to get to, and I ended up really having a fantastic time reading these books. One of my 5 stars definitely comes from here, so if you would like to know all of my feelings and what I read and what I said, go check out that video. Another video that went up this month is the final vlog for the Cane Chronicles series, The Serpent's Shadow. I read this pretty much in 1 or 2 days, and if you would like to see the finale of my thoughts on this series, again, it's all up above. And the last book I read for content this month was Happy Place by Emily Henry. I read this book for the Kiss and Tell book club. This is a book club I host with my friends Zoe, Jenny, and Dorothy. And they will be having the live show sometime this weekend. So make sure to check that out if you can. I will leave a link down below to their channels. I believe it is on Jenny's channel. This is a book that follows 2 characters, Harriet and Win, and they are set to kind of go to this, it's not a chalet, but because I'm Quebecois, I cannot for the life of me think of like a a cottage, it seems is the word, in Maine with their groups of friends, and they have all been friends for the last decade, and Win and Harriet have been like a strong couple in this dynamic. Unfortunately for everybody else, they have broken up. They have broken off their engagement, but in order to not like cause a rift in the weekend getaway, they've decided to just pretend that they're still engaged and fake it for 1 week on vacation with their friends. How hard could it be? My relationship with Emily Henry has not changed. I know a lot of people love her, but for me, both the books I've read from her have been somewhat average. Beach Read, I gave 3 stars, and I'm giving this a slightly higher rating than Beach Read, but not by much. It still didn't grab me and swing me around in a way that a lot of people seem to feel about Emily Henry's books in general, but also with this book. But please take this review with a grain of salt because obviously I don't seem to be the person that loves Emily Henry. So if you're wondering how good this book is, it won't come from me. I really did enjoy the overall setup of the novel and our main character's friendship with her best friends from college. I thought the conflicts in this one were really relatable, and I think that this is something that Henry always gets right. I found Sabrina and Win, so Sabrina being the best friend of our main character Harriet and Win being her fiance, to be very similar characters to me. So I ended up really enjoying those characters and completely understanding their motivations and like rooting for them. However, while I still don't know exactly what I want from romance books, and I'm still like relatively new to the romance genre, or at least reading it consistently. Fake dating is not it for me. I absolutely despise like miscommunications and stuff like that, and I think fake dating just kind of like amplifies that. I think I could have gotten behind a second chance romance if everybody knew that they had broken up and they're kind of like rekindling this love there, but I find fake dating to be extremely frustrating to read, especially as it's moving in and out of these waves of miscommunication and misunderstanding that I just find so exhausting to read. Additionally, I think another error maybe on my part was reading this on audio. I really wouldn't recommend listening to this. This story weaves through memories of the past and moments in the present, sometimes in separate chapters, and that was easy to understand, but sometimes it's during like a similar moment that the character is experiencing, and then we are put in the past to kind of revisit this past experience, but it's not quite separated in a way that is easy to understand when you're listening to it on audio. And while I really wanted to immerse myself in this novel and give Emily Henry a chance, I really believed I could love this book, this often left me really confused, and rewinding the audiobook to understand what was happening, on top of the fact that I wasn't really enjoying the book, and I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars. So far out of the 2 books I've read, this is my favorite Emily Henry, but I really think that fake dating is what killed it for me. So now let's move back into the books that I haven't talked about at all this month. The first of which being Flawless by Elsie Silver, which has been hounded into me by my friends Jenny, Zoe, and Lucy, and Dorothy. Lucy and Zoe really harassed me to read this book with them. They are currently on, I don't know what book. I still have not read the second book, but we are here to talk about the first book anyways. So this book follows 2 characters, Rhett and Autumn. Her name is actually Summer. The characters in these books have names of seasons, and I got mixed up between the seasonal girlies. So her name is Summer, and every time I say Autumn, I mean Summer. Okay, bye. Rhett is a bull rider who has faced some controversy for his commentary on milk and the way that he handles this type of downfall of his career. And Autumn is the daughter of his agent, and Autumn is kind of sent to Rhett to like watch over him, to kind of be his like agent babysitter and go live on his family's farm. Obviously, romance develops from there. And I don't really have much to say about this book because I ended up really enjoying this. My review is baby lock the door and turn the lights down low. So I feel like that expresses quite a bit in its poetry. So I ended up really liking this book. I think the conflicts in the novel made sense. Like, Rhett doesn't want Autumn there. He doesn't understand why he's being babysitting. Autumn really wants to prove herself and prove that she can be an agent and not just her father's daughter. So she's really motivated to like make Rhett turn another cheek. The romance is quite believable in the book because they're spending such close proximity with one another. They're obviously going to spend a lot of time and get to know each other and fall in love. I found Autumn to have really interesting conflicts with her sister and what's going on in her family dynamic. I find that relationship to be really interesting. And I know that in the series, there is a book that follows Winter. So I would be really excited to see their dynamic and how it develops. I think Rhett has a really wonderful and fun family, and that will obviously get developed in further books. But yeah, I don't have much to say about this book. There were some moments that were a bit cringe, but I ended up really enjoying the story of the both of them. I think Rhett was a really interesting character. I really like sultry bad boys that don't like expressing their feelings. So obviously I was gonna like Rhett. I think it was fairly obvious that I was gonna like his character, but I really enjoyed Autumn. I thought she was really interesting and really brought forth some of the needed spark in the relationship, because I think Rhett being so distant, like, it would only have been Autumn to like engage in this. The audiobook was quite an interesting listen. I am trying to get used to listening to romance and smutty scenes on audio. Sometimes they make me a little bit uncomfortable, but overall, I just thought this was really fun. This was gifted to me by my friend Jenny, and I want to thank her so much for doing so because I had a great time and I gave this 4 stars. After that, I read quite a few books for AAPI month, especially because Cindy over at With Cindy was hosting the Asian Readathon, and there were a lot of different prompts and I wanted to participate. So the first book I read was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is essentially a couple of short stories that follow this cafe where if you sit in a specific spot at a specific time with coffee, you can travel back in time at the cafe at that spot and revisit a moment in time that maybe you want to get more clarity on, change in a sense, although it doesn't change the outcome as our characters learn. And the only catch is that you have to be back before the coffee gets cold. I went into this with the absolute highest of expectations, and I am so disappointed to say the least. I was absolutely expecting to devour this book and give it 5 stars. I had like my annotation pens and my tabs at the ready, and as you can see, there's nothing. Unfortunately, I was just really let down by the writing. And while Kawaguchi definitely dives into how each individual character is feeling, I personally did not feel like we understood the depth of those feelings. It could be the translation, which was done by Geoffrey Trousselot, but I did not find the writing in this book to be impactful or affect me in any way. I understand that the stories in the novel were meant to be touching, but I really didn't get a sense of that. What I definitely got, absolutely, was the freaking rules of this cafe and the rules of traveling back in time, because they are repeated to you incessantly. And if this was supposed to mean something symbolically, I just really didn't understand that. I wanted to be hit in the gut with emotion, but I was just bored instead, unfortunately. And I ended up giving this 2 stars. However, we skyrocketed from there because I read The Jade Setter of Janlun by Fonda Lee next. This is a standalone novella that takes place in the Jade City world, or the Greenbone Saga world, rather. But essentially, this series takes place in the city of Janlun, and it is ruled by Jade and Jade warriors. So the Jade is a rare and ancient substance that enhances the abilities and the statuses of Greenbone warriors. And these Greenbone warriors specifically run the island's laws in powerful clans. In this book, we are following the Jade Setter, who is a person that takes the winning jade, or the jade that a Greenbone warrior obtains, and turns it into jewelry that they can wear on their body so that their powers are within them. It also follows this Jade Setter's apprentice and what happens to him. So this was such a short book. The way that Fonda Lee makes me care so much about characters in so few pages, because this book is only 112 pages, is why I will always enjoy anything she publishes. It could possibly be because I've spent so much time in this world. I've read the entire Greenbone saga and I gave all of them 5 stars because I absolutely love that series. But I haven't read Jade Legacy in a while. I read it last year, but when I read the first page, I was immediately sucked in and I fell back in and I was completely immersed. Fonda Lee really did such a great job with that. I also listened to this on audio, and Andrew Kishino's narration style in these audiobooks is chef's kiss. I was so happy he narrated this novella because I think that also helped me become re-immersed in the story, because I'm so used to listening to his voice when it comes to this world. I love how he voices the characters. I really enjoyed the story. I'm not going to get too much more in depth than that because obviously I don't want to spoil it. It's so short, but the plot was extremely fast paced. It was interesting. It tied well into the story and added something interesting and different to the world. Loved it. Gave it 5 stars. It was an absolutely amazing read. After that, upon the recommendation of my friend Haunani, I read Sharks in the Time of Saviors by Kawai Strong Washburn. This is a very interesting story that kind of follows this family generationally, but starts in 1995 when this family's youngest son, Noah, falls overboard on a cruise ship into the Pacific Ocean. When a group of sharks appears in the water, obviously everybody fears for the worst, but instead Noah is delivered to his mother on the backs of the sharks. And this makes his story and his life the stuff of legends. After that, we follow the family over the years as Noah's mom and Noah believe that they are sent here from the gods. I didn't know what to expect going into this novel, and I can say that I was pleasantly surprised. I am a big fan of family saga novels, so as soon as I realized that the narrative structure for this book was framed in such a way, I knew that I was going to love this. The writing of the novel immediately pulled me in, not only because it felt magical, but also because each individual character's POV felt really real, while also being very distinct from one another. Whenever I was listening to the audiobook, I knew immediately whose POV I was in. There wasn't one perspective that I was not interested in listening to, because each character and each chapter was so key to the novel, and you really felt that when you were reading it. I won't focus too much on the plot because I feel like this is something that you should just really dive into, but this novel overall focuses on issues of class, racism, while focusing on the importance of old cultural beliefs. I found this to be really moving, especially because I listened to it on audio and I found the narrators did a fantastic job at really emphasizing the importance of this book. And I ended up giving it 4 stars. Really enjoyed this, really recommend it. After that, I read probably one of my favorite nonfiction books I've ever read. It is Be Not Afraid of Love by Mimi Xu. This is a very powerful book of interconnected kind of essays that are all about Mimi Xu's journey of connecting with love and reconfirming her feelings towards love, especially because Mimi Xu is writing this after a violent, abusive relationship. It is a very, very revolutionary book, at least for me as someone who also experienced a similar relationship to what Mimi Xu experienced in this book. I don't want to get too into it because I do think that this book is really personal to me, and the reason why I enjoyed it so much is because I could relate to Mimi Xu's feelings and the way that she perceives the world and the way she has kind of had to reconnect and regrow with learning how to love and being more vulnerable. Honestly, I was really read to filth in this book. It's such a beautiful memoir that really moved me. I think Mimi Xu has an excellent writing style. I obviously tabbed so many lines because I just think she really landed on the nose of different feelings that we have, especially coming out of relationships that don't make us feel loved. I really love this. I think it's obvious that I gave this 5 stars. I would really recommend it to anyone. I think it's a really interesting discussion. And even if you do not have a troubled dynamic with loving yourself and loving other people and being vulnerable, I think that it is a really interesting book and I would still highly recommend it. After that, I read another book that I see people loving, and that is Darius the Great Is Not Okay by Adib Khorram, and I am definitely one of those people now. This book follows a young boy named Darius who feels disconnected from his Iranian culture. Darius speaks Klingon better than Farsi, and he knows more about Hobbit social cues over Persian ones. He's about to take his first trip to Iran because his grandfather is sick and his mom wants the families to come together again, and Darius finds himself extremely overwhelmed, especially because he is dealing with his chronic depression, disapproving father, and alienating social life. I absolutely adored this book. Even though I've seen a lot of my friends cry at this book, I genuinely went into this book not expecting that I would be a sobbing mess at the end, but alas, that's exactly what I was. The message in this book about not feeling like you belong in 2 places where you have family and that you feel like you should belong is very real. The family dynamics in this book were so cute and really pulled at my heartstrings. But I think what really stood out to me in this book is the discussions that Adib Khorram is having with depression. You can really tell that Khorram has experienced depression himself and demonstrated within the book beautifully how depression affects not only the individual, but everyone around them as well. I really love this. I think it's obvious that I gave it 5 stars. It was so great, so impactful, and I think if you haven't picked up this YA book yet, you definitely need to. Speaking of having different expectations for books than we expected, the next book I read was Upon a Burning Throne by Ashok K. Banker. I thought I was gonna love this book. This book is sort of a retelling of an Indian classic called the Mahabharata. Sorry if I mispronounced that. And it is essentially following a world where demigods and demons walk among mortals. The emperor of the fast-burnt empire has died, leaving a turbulent realm without an emperor. 2 young princes, Adri and Shvet, are in line to rule, but birthright does not guarantee inheritance, for any successor must sit upon the legendary burning throne and pass the test of fire. So that is essentially the prologue of the book, and the novel overall follows this family and follows these 2 boys as they enter their upcoming power of being emperors. Now, as I mentioned in this video, but also in several videos, that I love family sagas. I love books that follow generations of families over time. So I really thought that I was going to love this book. I even thought I was going to give it 5 stars. I was obsessed with the idea of this book. And maybe you could say that I went into this book with too high of expectations, but I did not have a good time with this. I didn't feel any particular attachment to the characters besides Adri and Shvet, but even they sometimes were unable to captivate me. Additionally, I found the plot of the novel overall to be extremely repetitive, especially in the beginning and the middle portion, and I only really found myself engaged with the book at the end. And even more specifically with the last few chapters and the overall twist that occurs within the end of the book. And yes, I do see and I do acknowledge that potentially spending 600 boring pages with the characters previously made me care a bit more and made the ending more worthwhile and more shocking. As well, I really couldn't get behind the amount of ableism and misogyny that occurs in this book. I understand that it's a retelling of an original myth, but I still think retellings are best when they challenge those myths and old stories and bring a fresh perspective to the modern times, which I don't think this book did at all. A lot of what happens in this book is dragged out, and like I mentioned, the last 100 pages completely brought the book up for me. I don't think I will be continuing in on this series at all though, because this book almost put me in a slump, but those last few pages really saved it, and I ended up giving it a 3 stars. And then sadly, I ended the month on another disappointing read, and that was Girls of Fate and Fury by Natasha Nagan. This is the last book in the Girls of Paper and Fire series, I don't know if it has another name, which had a first book that I absolutely adored. This series follows a world where there is sort of a caste system. So you have the moon caste of people who are fully demon, and the demon king, the person who controls this world, is obviously at the top. Then you have the steel caste. These are humans endowed with partial animal demon qualities, both in physicality and abilities. And then you have the paper class, and these people are fully human, don't have any animal or demon features, and they are incapable of demon abilities like flight or whatever. And this series follows a character named Lei, who is of the paper caste. She is completely human. The only thing that makes her different from others is that she has yellow eyes. And the Girls of Fate and Fury book is the conclusion of this and how they kind of take back what was stolen from them, essentially. This novel contains a lot of trigger warnings for sexual abuse. I would definitely look into that before you start this series overall, because it can sometimes be a very uncomfortable read. I really enjoyed this book and this series overall. When I think about the themes of overcoming trauma and abuse, the redemptions that readers and Lei and Ren feel with how this story ends, and the overall writing from Nagan, which I have always loved. However, I do feel like this series really went down after the second book, and I think the overall themes and plot were kind of lost along the way throughout this series. And I think that that really hindered my overall enjoyment of this last book as well. I think my main gripe with this book is really its pacing and plot, which I feel like took a really long time to develop and often went back and forth within the novel with no real gain. And then suddenly, in the last 100 pages or so, the entire battle happens and is resolved. This battle that we've been building up for a book and a half. And I just think that this book would have really benefited as a duology. And I personally feel like Natasha Nagan was kind of forced to make it a trilogy because it was being published during this time of loving trilogies. But I think it would have been so much stronger as a duology, because I really feel like nothing happens in book 2. It felt completely unnecessary to me. And we could have just fleshed out the plot a bit more in books 1 and this one in a way that made sense, because I just don't feel like the plot in book 2 even affected anything that happened here. I really wanted to enjoy this, but sadly, I think this book series just went downhill for me. I still enjoyed the writing, like I said. I still enjoyed how it ended and the redemption that is felt at the end of the book, but I ended up giving this 3 stars. And that's it. Those are all of the books I read in the month of May. Please let me know down below if you've read any of them. Did you like them? Did you hate them? Let me know. Of course, if you would like to follow me on any of my other social medias, I do leave a link down below to my Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram if you would like to follow me there. And because it is the end of the video, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. I tell you every time, but it just wonders for my channel. It makes me feel really good. And that's it. I never know how to end these things, but I will see you next time, okay? Bye!